Hello and welcome to In Business Talks 2. We're through to welcome to our bonus episode of the Friday Fix. In our bonus episode, we will be discussing a business-related subject with either one of our wonderful In Business Networking members or a fellow business owner who will be sharing their advice, thoughts or knowledge on a particular topic.
We are your hosts, Tracy and Ian Earle, founders of In Business, a networking and business support community. We host online and face-to-face events, and we'd love to meet you, so why not come along? The link to book is in the show notes. Our guest this week is Nick Wilmshurst, and he is a producer with more than 20 years experience in the media at the BBC. He spent most of his time tinkering with audio on the radio, but has also worked on BBC Breakfast, on BBC One and online news. So without further ado, let's crack on with our Friday Fix. Welcome to our Friday Fix. Today we have with us Nick Wilmshurst. It's Wilmshurst, isn't it? I'll start
Wilmshurst, that's
Yes,
right. Yeah,
yeah.
it's well, don't worry about it. Ian, I don't think we should start again. I think because there's an S and an H in the middle, it's people often come up against it and think it should be a sh sound when it's like a hard Wilmshurst. You see,
So I was right in the first place, right?
Okay, I'll leave that then. Okay.
Okay, so we've got Nick of Ginger Wizard Productions. Welcome, Nick.
Welcome, Nick.
Thanks very much indeed for having me. It's lovely to be with you.
Yeah, it's good to see you today.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose we should start by asking you, Nick, to tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, Ginger Wizard Productions is an end-to-end podcast production company. We do training as well. So I work with a few further education establishments at the moment. I'm maybe going into a few companies to talk to them about training their staff as well in the dark arts of podcasting. So there's the training side and also the doing side. So I can talk to you about how you think about doing your podcast, what you need to go through before you hit that record button, recording it, editing it, and then doing all the other stuff that you'll know all too well about, uploading it, all the boring bits. I do that as well.
Mm-hmm,
Cool.
mm-hmm. So what got you into that? Because I know you've got quite an interesting background, I dare say.
Well, they make it sound like I'm a criminal.
No,
I'm
sorry,
not.
no.
I'm not
You're
a
not,
criminal.
No. Interested in a good way.
Yeah, so I worked for the BBC for 24 years, and all sorts of stuff I've done in that time. So I've mainly worked in radio. I've worked quite a bit in network TV. So I was a producer at network TV, a bit at BBC Breakfast for a while. Worked a bit in network radio, and finished my career here in Leeds at Radio Leeds. And there I was working on the breakfast show, and latterly the mid-morning show with Gail Lofthouse, who's wonderful. Give her a listen if you're ever out and about in the car and want something entertaining to listen to. As is Rima, the other breakfast presenter there. Anyway, I've talked myself into a cul-de-sac there. Shouldn't have. And took voluntary redundancy in November last year. And haven't looked back since. I've been, really on the go since January of doing it, and I've loved every single second. It's been brilliant. I've met loads of wonderful people. Working at that radio station, working at Radio Leeds, you kind of feel like you meet a lot of local people who are doing great things. And then you step outside of that and you think, oh, crikey, I've lost all those connections and I'm going to have to, sort of start from scratch again. But I've got to say, the business community in Leeds is absolutely fantastic, so welcoming, so interested in what you do. It's been amazing, and I've loved every single second of it, I have to say.
Yeah. It is. It is great working for yourself, and you might think it's lonely, but it's not. If if you start getting out there and networking and talking to people, then you're not on your own.
And I think the Leeds community is quite a vibrant business community as well. I think it's there are lots of businesses out there, and it's good buzz, good feel about it, I think.
It definitely is. I mean, I was totting yesterday, so I went to a networking do at the Decanter in Leeds last night, and I was totting up how many people in total I met for the first time yesterday, either online or and it was about 16. And you think, crikey, no wonder I feel really tired, because
Yeah.
your brain's doing all that processing and meeting and sort of working out
Yeah,
who's who and
yeah.
what's what.
Mm.
And I've got to say, I enjoyed every single one of those conversations I had yesterday. Today's a bit quieter, thankfully.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll have to come along to one of ours in Leeds. We do them at Two Works, which is
Opposite the
right, yeah.
Metropole.
West Metropole. I'll send you an
Oh,
invitation.
right. I often wondered what went on in there.
Ooh,
Oh,
well, it's not just us.
No, it's not just us.
We like
Yeah,
to-
yeah. There's a number of businesses in there.
It's the old Bank of England building, but
Yeah.
there's the main. Well, I think they've got 2 floors, haven't
Yeah,
they?
they've got a
Two
couple of floors.
Works, and it's offices. You can hot desk. You can hire a whole office. You can hire a whole desk. You can hire half a desk. I suppose.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you know, I understand
Lovely
that,
space. Lovely space.
that the original safe is still in there.
Mm.
They
Yes,
still
they
have the
are.
original big safe.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're all underground, I think. Because I think
Yeah.
somebody was, I don't know if it's true or not, I'm sure they were telling me not that long ago it still sometimes gets used,
Yeah.
because I think
Yeah,
they
I
close
heard
off the
this.
street, and then they
have like a
they have
delivery
guards,
of,
and they have delivery
guards.
of whatever.
Yeah.
So there is still something underneath there, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
What is it? It's really intriguing, isn't it? I really want
Yeah,
to
it
know.
is. Yeah, we'd love to have a look around, because they'd never let you,
No,
would they?
no.
But
They
it'd
won't
be
let you
good.
in.
No,
No.
be good.
And it is bomb-proof.
It's bomb-proof as well, so once you're in there, you're safe with us, Nick. I mean, it's not so cracking if the bomb goes off
On the
inside, I would
inside,
imagine,
no.
but
Yeah, I'd rather
certainly on
not
the
find that
inside,
out.
you're fairly safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what goes on in there.
So how did you decide then on your podcast sort of niche or topic? What made you?
Well, I mean, I'm more in the business of making them for people. So I'm the guy that will come in and advise you how to do this, that, and the other. I mean, I do have a podcast, and it's all very meta. It's about a podcast about podcasting. So I'm on a podcast talking about a podcast which is about podcasting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Wow.
it's a bit too much, isn't
Wow.
it?
Well, yeah.
But
Twilight
it's
Zone.
but I'm quite proud of it. It's a nice little. It's a 5-part series at the minute. I'm about to do series 2, which I'll tell you about in a second. But the first series is all about doing the basics, what you need to do when you get started. It's about these things, the microphones, what you need to do to get the right sound, editing, things like, even if you do record something which sounds horrendous, there are ways of fixing it, but the whole gist of it is get it right the first time, and then you don't need to do the fixing, which I know it's something probably that you know. And then I've got the second series, which is going to launch next month, where it's more of a chat-based thing. So I'm talking to Rima Ahmed, who is the breakfast show presenter at Radio Leeds. Obviously, she's a mate, but I got talking to her about it suddenly became, especially through all the training that I've been doing, that a lot of people, well, almost everybody that does a podcast is just a normal person, and they're doing it for the first time. So how do you host? How do you get it into your head? How do you host? How do you ask the right questions in interviews? How do you make it sound really good for the first time, if you've never ever done it before? So, that's so that's going to be an episode. And I've been speaking to Tim Johns, who's the producer for Jeremy Vine, on Radio 2. And, we get a little bit geeky about audio, but, it's hints and tips over what you can do to sound better.
Yeah.
Right. No, that sounds
Okay.
interesting. Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, what would be your? I mean, obviously, without giving all your secrets away, what would be some sort of general tips for someone thinking about starting their own podcast? When you're going into these organisations, what do you have, like a first things first list, and then you sort of work through it? What's the process?
I think the very first thing you've got to think about is, who is your audience,
Mm-hmm.
and what are you gonna provide for them? What are you gonna sit there and tell them? And there's lots of different things. I mean, obviously, this is a chat-based podcast we're on at the minute. There are lots of other things, and some people have, they've got an amazing story to tell. So it's how you tell that story. It's so a chat thing might not especially work for that. That might be a lot more about unfolding their story, and there's a lot of editorial process that you have to go through to get that right. So that is something that I think a lot of people don't get right at the very start. They don't think about it, and you've absolutely got to, because yes, a lot of people will sit down and go, I'm going to do a podcast. First thing that comes into their head is something like this. They talk to people from XYZ backgrounds, and that's the podcast, and that's fine. But sometimes it just requires a bit of extra thought. And I've been in the job for a long time. Yes, I've only been doing this since January, but I've got 24 years of experience. Every day I was setting up guests, thinking of ways that we could make what we were coming out the speakers a lot more entertaining or jazz it up. And it's all that stuff that I bring back into the world of podcasting.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
So what sort of equipment do people need to start off with? I mean, I know there's so many. We were talking before we pressed the record button, didn't we, about interface, and you were saying one for 500-600 quid. But do people need all that special stuff? What do they need?
If you want to do it on a budget, what sort of mic you need to get started?
I would, if you wanted to do it on a budget. I mean, a lot of people will pick up their phone and do it through the mics on their phone, and certain Apple phones, they're quite, they're actually not too bad. The thing about podcasting is it's an intimate thing. It's one-on-one. It's you as the host. Never mind if you've got guests or anything like that. It's you talking to the person on the other end, the listener. If something gets in the way of that, like a poor quality mic, or you've not saved it quite at the right bit rate for it to be high enough quality that it sounds good in your headphones, you're putting a barrier between you and the listener. And that's exactly what you don't want to do. So I would always advise, spend as much as you're willing to on it. Now, the mic I'm speaking through here is like about 100. In fact, this one's about 250 quid's worth of mic. And I appreciate not everyone's got that sort of cash lying around to spend on a microphone. There are really decent ones out there. I'll give you a free tip. Hang on, let me find out. Sorry, you're right. I'm back again. This is a great mic. This is the Podcast Pro, and it's by a company called Sontronics. It costs about 70 quid, and is nearly as good with a bit of EQ. You can make it sound like this mic, and it's wonderful. It's really good, and that's the mic I send out to clients who we can't meet up physically. So I send out a microphone to them. They get it through the post. It comes with a USB cable that just goes into their laptop or PC or whatever. Turns into you set it to be the microphone on your computer. And that gets uploaded and off we go. And it's near enough perfect studio quality. 70, not bad. Headphones, you can spend as much or as little as you want on them. I mean, I have them all the time when I'm recording, just because I like to know exactly what's going on. Saves me a bit of time when I'm editing later on. Again, you can spend as much as you want on headphones, or as little. Proper editing software, mine cost me 35 quid a month. It's a Adobe Audition. I love it. It does everything. People may not want to spend that. There are free versions of audio editors. Audacity is one, but my word, it is a pig. I don't like it at all. Awful kit for somebody that's used to use it. And some people use it and get along fine with it. You just learn your way through it, and it becomes the norm. That is free. Audition is not. So again, you pay your money, you take your choice. And then that, I guess, if you really wanted a basic setup, is it. So you probably could do it decently for about £100 quid. As I say, getting it right in quality wise is your first
Yeah, getting it right first time. Yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah,
I've listened to some podcasts and the sound is just awful, and you just want to switch off. You don't want to
Yes,
listen to
exactly.
what they're saying because there's this awful buzz or this awful sort of muffled sound, or it's echoing. One of the, there's something, and you just think, oh, I can't
I
listen
mean,
to that.
sometimes we've had audio that's not been very good, and it's a real nightmare to edit.
Yeah.
Particularly if the other person's microphone or whatever it's scratchy and they keep moving away backwards and forwards from it, and it goes up and down, and it can take an age. I use Audacity, by the way. It's taken me an age to learn just the basics, just to get through it. It is really complicated. I mean, I can do the basic stuff on it now, but it used to take me a whole day, didn't it, to edit a podcast?
It still does.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's everything else I do with it as well, the
Oh,
notes
right.
and everything. But it's only a morning now. but you're right. It is. There's a dark art to it. I'm sure. I'm sure some people can whiz through it, but I know I can't. But
I mean, I'm talking from the position of some, for example, a presenter might have popped out of the studio at the radio station and said, "I need this and I need it after this record," and you're like, "Oh my word!" And then you've literally got 3.5 minutes, for example, to edit something together, save it into the system, drag it into the playout, and then it's on air. So that's my mentality.
you're thinking, yeah,
quick,
yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it does take time. It really does take time. I think everyone that does a podcast should go and work in a radio station for a day, and it just cements some things in your mind.
Yeah, probably a good learning experience, wouldn't it, for podcasting? Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So So how do you plan or structure your podcast then, or is that entirely up to you? What would your recommendations be for something like that?
So I think you've got to think again. One size
keep them
should not
engaged.
fit all here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think a lot of people tend to think that they've got to turn into somebody else. You've got to turn into somebody serious, or you've got to try and be somebody cool or something like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the bottom line, if you're thinking of doing it, is be yourself. Absolutely be yourself. And as far as structure goes, I think you're absolutely right. I think don't be boring. Never, ever, 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 ever be boring. As soon as you feel yourself getting a bit drony, or you've talked yourself into a bit of a alleyway, stop. Stop and think about it, and what things can you do at that point to bring the engagement back. And it can be as simple as just dropping a jingle in there. Just a bit of music in there just to break it up, and off you go again. Because
burst into song.
You could do if you wanted to.
We're always singing at home,
weird,
so
but...
we could just.
I could do an Elvis impression. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
How's that?
Is that your thing? Is that your side
no.
hustle, Ian? It is, isn't it? We found you out.
I do like Elvis, but I wouldn't be singing on air.
But no, I think you're absolutely right. It's fun. I was talking to a client the other day who's, they're dealing with some relatively weighty issues, and they were saying to me, "So, I was thinking of doing this," and I just went, "No, it's weighty, but it's not life or death stuff. You don't have to be down at heel. You don't have to be downbeat about it. You can be matter of fact, and actually, you could probably bounce along quite nicely if you just injected a bit of energy in there."
What about booking, finding guests and things that are appropriate for your podcast? I think when we started, there was one guy that we wanted to speak to, and I don't think he wanted to speak to us because we haven't been going that long, and I don't think we still haven't spoken to him.
No, so he spoilt it for himself now, hasn't he?
Yeah, he won't get another invite. No.
He's dead to us now, Nick. He's dead to us. Yeah.
That's the way, Ian.
He obviously felt he was as too big for our little podcast. How do you sort of pitch yourself? If you're trying to get guests, do you just say, "Oh, I'll speak to anybody," or it must be quite. Well, it is quite difficult sometimes.
The thing is that are you talking about persuasion there, or how do you decide who to pick?
How do you decide who to pick?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think first and foremost is, especially if you're just starting out, look at people's followers on social media. So Instagram, LinkedIn, if they've got a large followership, that's going to help you out immediately, because as soon as you interview them and you pop them on your page, everybody's, they're going to link to back to your page. People are going to hear your podcast, and hopefully that should have a positive effect. So there's that. And I think it's knowing, coming back to knowing who your audience is and knowing exactly what it is you're trying to achieve, because then you will know instinctively whether those people that you're looking at fulfill that brief. And if they do, brilliant. Drop them a line. I have to say, probably the better way is picking up the phone, and if you're really going for that golden guest, pick up the phone and talk to them. And it's basically cold calling.
Yeah.
But if you're engaging enough, if you're persuasive enough, then it's fine. I made a career out of phoning up people out of the blue and persuading them to come on for free onto the breakfast show at 6:50 in the morning for nothing in the studio. And it is possible. You can you can do these things. It gets easier once your podcast gets bigger, and you're gathering more listeners, more people downloading it. But just be bold, just absolutely have some brass nerve. That's the way to do it.
Oh, and now we've touched upon it. What was? Do you have a secret persuasive technique that you use, or are you not willing to share that? Is it?
Not really. I don't actually. I don't have a technique. I mean, I used to when I worked at Breakfast TV. People would say, "Oh, yeah, but I've already been booked by the Victoria Derbyshire show," and we were a bit cheeky. The Victoria Derbyshire show was on just after us, and their producers would basically try and nick our guests and vice versa. And you could just always just drop the absolute nuke of, "Oh yeah, but we've got about 10 times as many viewers as that. In fact, we're the most watched breakfast show in the UK." It's like, thank you very much for coming on. That's great. So that was a bit naughty, really. But I think just be charming, just be nice, just be engaging. Be very aware that you've cold called them and you're currently on their borrowed time. So be polite, be courteous, don't expect a yes, but give them the reasons why they should say yes. And if they say no, respectful, maybe try and claw it back once, never try and claw it back a third time, because that's just they're just going to get annoyed. And people do love a bit of buttering up, "Oh, but you'd just be the perfect person for this. You'd be absolutely perfect. We'd love you to come on. Honestly, you'd be such, an amazing thing for us, and we'd love you to do it." All that stuff, absolutely fine. But just watch it on the repetition of that. I'd say. But absolutely, shoot as high as you want to go, and don't think there are any boundaries, because sometimes you'll get someone just saying, "Oh yeah, right. I'll give it a go. Why not?"
Yeah. We'll have to try that.
Yeah.
So, what, in your opinion, are some of the common mistakes and that you think that new podcasters make, and what can they do to avoid them? Is it all to do with the sound and the mics and the things like?
Well, no, I think like we've already covered, not thinking about it. Think and think and think and think about it. Listen around, hear what other people around you are doing. So that could be people who are in the same line of work as you that already do it, or people kind of with the same sort of setup. Do a little bit of exploring online, see who does what and how they do it, and just try and think outside the box a little bit. I know it's an awful phrase, but do it, because it's worth it. There are no rules. You've got no editor sitting over your shoulder, expecting X, Y, and Z from you. There are no rules. It's your show. You can do whatever you want with it. There are no expectations. Play around with it. Have some fun. That is first and foremost. Just make sure your content's brilliant, or at least as good as you can get it. And secondly, it comes the equipment and all the rest of it.
I was going to ask, is it, I mean, we never have, but is it fairly easy to, you hear about monetizing your podcast? What are your thoughts on that? We never have.
It's a tricky one.
We don't know how, but our 7 listeners won't pay that in advertising revenue.
I'm going to throw some stats at you, right? So, Acast, for example, will start to consider you. You will be considered for monetization and putting ads on the platform if your podcast reaches more than 2,000 downloads in its first week. Right, so you upload. Say this episode gets uploaded, as I'm sure it will, gets about 3, maybe 4,000 listens.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't they? Yeah.
Then at that point, you've got to activate it. You've got to tap Acast on the shoulder and say, "Hey, look at this. We're getting the numbers. Let's start making some money." At which point you go through the whole process. Now, the top 1%. So we're talking about Diary of a CEO here. They're a real big Josh Rogan, the big ones.
Yeah.
They're in the top 1%, and they are grossing around about 5,500 downloads a week. So right there, that's what you're up against.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to go down that. I mean, what we are talking about there is automated ads. We're talking about Spotify, Acast, all of them dropping in ads into your show, which is by far, I would probably say, the most lucrative way of doing it, and the most reliable because because it stays relevant all the time. Yeah. The other way of doing it is doing it off your own back. So, for example, Ian and Tracy could walk into Hardesty, the estate agents, and say, "Look, would you be willing to pay us 200 quid an episode for us to, either do an endorsement in the show, or we could make a little ad and put that on the front or the end or whatever." And you do a deal, and that deal lasts per episode, and you could think about doing it that way. And it's a bit of an uncharted territory that in some ways. Some people have been doing it for a little while. It may be the option. The only downside to that is, of course, they've paid per episode, so it's baked into your podcast and will stay there for forevermore, no matter what happens within that company, no matter what happens with you. There's no way of separating the two apart from just taking the episode down. So there's that to think about as well.
Yeah, true. Yeah, once it's in there, it's in forever, isn't it? Like you say.
Absolutely.
Once it's recorded. Yeah. Okay.
So even if you have a big fallout with that estate agent, they will forever darken your door, Ian.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I've thought
Not that they would.
Right.
They're very respectable and they're very good.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Brilliant. Some really good advice there. Is there anything else you think we've forgotten to touch on? If
I don't think so. I think
we've got it pretty much covered.
Yeah, I think we have. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Great stuff. And if people want to get in touch with you, Nick, what is the best way to do that?
So you can go to my website. It's gingerwizard.co.uk. That's probably the best way. The usual sort of stuff, contact forms on there, or you can drop me a line, nick@gingerwizard.co.uk. Okay.
And are you on LinkedIn as well?
Oh, I am on LinkedIn. Yeah, I am.
There you go.
Just search for Nick Wilmshurst, not Nick Wilmshurst.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll do that. It's quite memorable, though, isn't it? Nick Wilmshurst. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad I've got that right then.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's been lovely talking to you, Nick. And,
you too.
Good luck in your kind of new venture, really, isn't it? Fairly new venture.
Yeah. Wish you success. Yeah.
Hopefully
Thank you very much.
See you around the networking circuit.
Yeah, we'll invite you.
See you there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it, Nick. Thank you.
Take care.
Loved it.
Goodbye.
Thank you ever so much, both of you. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're almost at the end of this week's show, and just as a reminder before we go, Don't forget to book your place at one of our online networking events where you can meet some great business owners and build those business relationships. If you're in the Leeds, Harrogate, York or Wakefield areas, then why not come along to one of our face-to-face events and meet us? The best business comes from the best relationship, and the link to book is in the show notes. Do you wish you could network with more confidence? We understand the challenges you face, whether you're new to networking or simply looking to improve your skills. Our Networking Know-How course will take you through the process and provide you with the practical tips and techniques to help you make more meaningful connections.
We'd also like to mention our books, which are available on Amazon. How to Improve Your Business Networking Skills, 52 Tips to Help You with Your Business Networking. And Notably Networking, One-to-One Networking Notebook is a place to keep all your notes from those follow-up one-to-ones. And last but not least, our 90 Days to Your Success Journal, where you can plan, set and plot those actions that you will take to achieve your goals. Thank you so much for joining us this week on In Business Talks to Friday Fix. We hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, all that we ask is that you simply tell a friend about the show. And please follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd really appreciate it.
So until next time, this is Ian and Tracy, and together we are In Business. Goodbye.
Goodbye.